Sell the house, or I'll put you in an old home. My son-in-law said it like he was ordering lunch. Cold, casual. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, just listened. They thought I was a lonely old man, easily broken. They were about to learn this old detective knew how to fight a war. If this story finds you, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this world. It started long before that night. It started with the silence. The house was too quiet. It had been 5 years since Helen passed. 5 years of silence. Sometimes I'd walk through the rooms just to hear my own footsteps. The hardwood floors she loved echoed with memories I couldn't escape. I was retired, 35 years as a detective with the city police. And what did I have? A good pension, a house full of ghosts, and a quiet that felt like a heavy blanket, slowly suffocating me. I used to analyze details, piece together lies. Now I organized old case files and tended Helen's rose bushes. I felt like an old tool left rusting in a drawer. My purpose served, my edges dull. But tonight the house was alive. The smell of roasting chicken filled the dining room. Rosemary and garlic, Helen's recipe. My daughter Sarah was here. Her laughter brightened the room in a way I hadn't seen in years. And she had news. Big news. Dad, she said, her eyes shining like her mother's. We're pregnant. My first grandchild. A piece of Helen living on. My heart felt full. Truly full, for the first time since she left. But the joy had a shadow. A smudge on a clean piece of glass. The smudge was Mark, my son-in-law. Mark sat across from me. His teeth were too white. His suit cost more than my car. He was a wealth manager. They wore the title like a badge. He was handsome, slick, polished. The kind of handsome I never trusted. In my line of work, the most dangerous men always had the best smiles. And Mark's smile was blinding. He picked at his food, examining a tiny piece of chicken on his fork. Robert, this chicken is charming, Mark said. The word hung in the air, dripping with condescension. It's good, hearty food, Mark, I replied mildly. I kept my voice steady. I wouldn't let him rattle me. Not tonight. Oh, absolutely. Hearty. Traditional. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. Dismissive. It's just that the modern palate demands innovation. We must get you out of this culinary rut. A rut? That's what he thought my life was. To Mark, I was a relic, a dinosaur who still read a physical newspaper. He saw my quiet retirement not as peace, but as a failure. He didn't know the battles I'd fought to earn this peace. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea. Be nice, Dad. Mark just wants you to enjoy your retirement, Dad, she said, her voice soft. He worries about you, Sarah. My sweet girl. She always saw the best in people. It was her greatest strength, and her greatest weakness. She had fallen hard for Mark's charm, his promises of a glamorous future. I tried to see what she saw, but all I saw was a carefully constructed mask, and my instincts were rarely wrong. The conversation moved along, polite, strained, like walking on thin ice. Then Mark cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat. He adopted the posture of a man about to deliver a sales pitch. I recognized that look. It was the same look a suspect gets when they think they have a foolproof alibi. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. Robert, with the baby on the way and your retirement finalized, Mark began, his tone serious. We need to talk about your future. He leaned forward. About optimizing your assets. I put my fork down. Slowly, the clink of the silver on the plate echoed in the quiet room. My assets, I asked. You mean my house? And my pension? The knot in my stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. Exactly, Mark beamed. His eyes were bright, eager, predatory. This house, Robert, it's wonderful, full of memories I know. But let's be practical. Practical. The word felt like a slap. Far too big for one man, he continued. The upkeep, the taxes, the repairs. It's a burden, Robert. A burden you shouldn't have to carry anymore. I looked around the dining room, the wallpaper Helen and I had put up, the height marks on the doorframe charting Sarah's growth. This house was more than bricks and mortar. It was my life. It was paid off. Decades of overtime shifts, missed holidays, All for this security. And he called it a burden. I managed just fine, Mark, I said, keeping my voice steady. But you could be doing so much better, Mark insisted. His voice was smooth as silk. The housing market is at its peak. If we sell now, we can liquidate the equity and invest it properly. He leaned closer. I'm talking about maximizing the return. For you, Robert, and for the baby's future. His proposal was simple and brutal. Sell the house. My home, Helen's legacy. Move me into a small, manageable apartment downtown. A sterile box. No garden, no memories. And let him manage the money. Invest it in his high-risk, high-reward ventures. It wasn't a proposal. It was an eviction notice. I don't know, Mark. I hesitated. I like it here, and I prefer conservative investments. That money is my security. Mark chuckled, a soft, patronizing sound. It grated on my nerves like sandpaper. Robert, conservative is just another word for stagnant, he said. The financial world has changed. The old ways, CDs, low-risk bonds, they just don't cut it anymore. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. You have to be aggressive. You have to take risks to reap the rewards. He was calling me weak. He was calling me old. He wasn't done. The next blow was aimed lower. You spent your life in the public sector, Robert, Mark said, his tone dripping with pity. You dealt with criminals and paperwork. You don't understand how the real financial world works? The insult was clear. You're old. You're clueless. Let the smart people handle it. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. 35 years of service dismissed in a single sentence. Maybe he was right. I looked at Sarah, hoping for support, hoping she would defend me. But she was looking at Mark. Her expression was one of complete adoration. She was mesmerized. Dad, Mark is right, she said, her voice soft but pleading. This house is falling apart, and you deserve to relax. My heart sank. She believed him. You shouldn't be worrying about gutters and plumbing at your age, she continued. And honestly, with the baby coming, we need that security. Mark can grow that money. He can make our future safe. Mark had convinced her my home was a burden, my savings a missed opportunity. The pain of her dismissal cut deeper than Mark's arrogance. My own daughter, the child I raised to be strong. She thought I was incompetent, a helpless old man who needed to be managed. The betrayal stung. It felt like they were erasing my life before I was even gone. I looked at Mark's eager face, at Sarah's trusting eyes. Maybe the world had passed me by. Maybe I was just a rusting tool in a drawer. All right, I whispered. The word tasted like ash. I'll consider it. We can look at the numbers. Defeat. I had surrendered my home, my independence. Mark clapped his hands together. The sound was sharp, triumphant. Excellent, Robert. Very smart move. He beamed. I knew you'd see the logic. I'll have my people draw up the paperwork. We can get the ball rolling by the end of the week. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Mark talked about emerging markets and complex derivatives, words that floated over my head like smoke. I just nodded, feeling a profound sense of loss. It wasn't just about the house. It was about being pushed aside, deemed irrelevant, but the real nightmare was just beginning. Later that night, the dishes were done. Sarah went upstairs to use the restroom. I went into the kitchen to make coffee. The routine felt comforting, normal. As I came back towards the dining room, I heard Mark's voice. It was coming from the study. My study. He must have slipped in there to make a call. Thinking I was out of earshot, I stopped in the hallway, hidden in the shadows. My detective instincts, dormant but not dead, flickered to life. It's done, buddy, Mark was saying. His voice was low, triumphant, smoother than I expected. I leaned closer. My heart pounded a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. The dinner was a bore, as usual, he sneered. But the bait was perfect. Bait. He was talking about the baby. He was using my grandchild as leverage. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. The old man finally caved, Mark continued, laughing softly. He's completely clueless. I swear, the guy still thinks a badge means something in the real world. He paused. The next words hit me like a physical blow. He's just a clueless old cop living in the past. Clueless old cop. The casual disrespect. The sheer arrogance. It took my breath away. But then, the next part froze the blood in my veins. The house is worth at least $500,000, maybe more, Mark boasted. Once I get my hands on that cash, we are back in business. Back in business? What did that mean? It's enough to cover the shortfall and get the investors off my back, he continued, his voice laced with relief. By the time he realizes the returns aren't coming, it will be too late. We'll be long gone. Cover the shortfall. Investors off his back. Long gone. The pieces clicked into place. A sickening, horrifying picture emerged. This wasn't about my retirement. It wasn't about the baby's future. It was about Mark saving his own skin. He was in trouble. Deep trouble. And he was planning to use my life savings, my home, Helen's legacy, to bail himself out. He wasn't just trying to manage my money. He was trying to steal it. This was the twist, the moment the narrative shifted. The fog of self-pity lifted, replaced by a cold, hard clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just an old man they could push aside. I was a detective. I'd spent 35 years uncovering lies, exposing frauds, protecting the innocent. And Mark, in his arrogance, had made a critical mistake. He underestimated a man who had had a lifetime paying attention to the details. I stepped back into the kitchen. My hands were shaking, not with fear, with adrenaline. I waited until I heard Sarah come downstairs, until I heard the front door close. The roar of Mark's expensive sports car faded into the night. The house was lighted again, but this time the silence wasn't empty. It was filled with purpose. The game had changed, and I was back on the job. The next morning I didn't open the newspaper. I opened my laptop, and I made a call I knew I could trust. David, it's Robert. I need a favor. David was my old partner. We joined the force together, walked the beat, earned our shields side by side. He retired a year before me. He was the only person I trusted completely. He didn't hesitate. Name it, Robert. Where and when? We met at our usual diner. The smell of burnt coffee and greasy bacon was a welcome change from Mark's expensive cologne. David sat across from me, stirring his coffee. His eyes were sharp, assessing. He hadn't lost his edge either. You look like you're back on the job, Robert, he said, a slight smile playing on his lips. What's the case? I told him everything. The proposal, the condescension, the overheard phone call, the sickening realization. David listened quietly. His expression grew darker with every word. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. The way a good partner does. When I finished, he pushed his coffee cup aside. That arrogant little punk, he muttered, his voice low and angry. He thinks he can steal from a cop and get away with it. He looked me straight in the eye. He's wrong. I need proof, David, I said, my voice urgent. Solid proof. Sarah won't believe me otherwise. She's completely under his spell, and I need to know how deep this goes. If I accused him without evidence, I would lose Sarah forever. Mark would make sure of that. Then let's get some, David said, pulling out his own laptop. Let's run a background check on Mr. Mark, the wealth manager. The hunt was on. We started digging. We didn't need fancy software. We used the tools we had honed over decades. Public records, financial databases, good old-fashioned police work, patience, diligence, and the understanding that everyone leaves a trail. Mark's firm was called Apex Wealth Solutions. It sounded impressive. The website was slick, full of jargon about synergy and innovation, photos of Mark shaking hands with minor local politicians. It was all smoke and mirrors, a facade designed to impress me. But when we looked at the actual filings, the story changed. Dramatically. It took us 3 days. Hours spent cross-referencing names and dates, reading through dry legal documents. The picture slowly emerged, like a photograph developing in a dark room. Apex Wealth Solutions wasn't thriving. It was drowning. Mark had taken massive risks. Speculative investments, cryptocurrency ventures, unstable foreign markets. They had all failed, spectacularly. He was leveraged to the hilt. borrowing money to finance his gambles, promising investors impossible returns. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, using new money to pay off old investors, and the well was running dry. He wasn't just in a shortfall, he was on the brink of bankruptcy, and potentially facing serious criminal charges. My house wasn't just an investment opportunity for him, it was a lifeline, his last chance to escape the wreckage of his own making. While we worked, I kept up the facade. I played the role of the tired, clueless old man. Mark sent over the investment documents. They were dense, intimidating, designed to confuse, but I wasn't confused anymore. I was focused, and I was about to tighten the screws. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. I took the documents to Mr. Harrison. He was the family lawyer. He handled Helen's will, an old-fashioned man, meticulous, cautious, the kind of man Mark despised. He looked over the papers, his brow furrowed with concern. He didn't like what he saw. "Robert, this is incredibly risky," he warned, tapping the documents with his pen. "It gives Mark total control over your assets, virtually no accountability." He looked me straight in the eye. "If these investments fail, you could lose everything. I strongly advise against this." I thanked him. I had the gentian opinion I needed. Now I needed to see how Mark would react. When I mentioned Mr. Harrison's concerns to Mark, he laughed, dismissively. "Harrison is ancient, Robert," he sneered. "He still uses a fax machine. He doesn't understand modern finance." He waved his hand, dismissing the decades of legal experience. "We need to move forward, not backward. Trust me, Robert. I know what I'm doing." The casual dismissal of professional advice only solidified my suspicion. He didn't want scrutiny. He wanted blind trust. And that was something I would never give him. Mark started turning the screws. He sensed my hesitation, my sudden reluctance to jump when he said jump. He didn't like it. He was used to getting his way. On Thursday, a realtor showed up at my door, unannounced, a young, slick woman named Jennifer. She introduced herself as a friend of Mark's. She didn't wait to be invited in. She breezed through my house, barely looking at the rooms, already calculating her commission. The disrespect was staggering. "We need to move fast, Robert," she insisted, pulling out a listing agreement. "The market is cooling. Mark told me you were eager to sell." Eager to sell. Another lie. "I have a cash buyer lined up," she continued, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "An investment group. They are offering slightly below asking price. But it's the best deal you'll get." The urgency felt artificial, forced. I recognized the signs of a setup. The investment group was likely connected to Mark. A quick sale to liquidate my assets before I changed my mind. "I'm not ready to list yet," I said firmly, escorting her to the door. I didn't let her control the situation. This was my house, my terms. Her frustration was palpable. Her fake smile turned into a sneer as she left. "You're making a mistake, Robert," she spat. "Mark won't be happy." Good. I wanted him unhappy. I wanted him nervous. The pressure was mounting, but the hardest blow was yet to come. The hardest blow came from the person I loved most. Sarah called me on Friday morning. Her voice was tight with stress. Mark had clearly been in her ear, poisoning her against me. "Dad, what are you doing?" she cried. "Mark says you're dragging your feet, questioning his judgment. Are you trying to jeopardize our future?" The accusation stung. It felt like a betrayal. "I'm just being careful, sweetheart," I tried to explain. "This is a big decision. I need to understand the risks." But she wasn't listening. She was panicked. "Careful, Dad, we need this money," she insisted, her voice rising hysterically. "My baby needs this security. You're being selfish and paranoid." Selfish. Paranoid. The words hurt more than I could say. "You're stressing me out, Dad," she sobbed. "It's bad for the baby." Emotional blackmail. The lowest blow. She hung up on me. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. My heart broke. Mark had turned my own daughter against me. She was choosing him over me. The isolation felt complete. I sat in my quiet house, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. Doubt crept in. Was I being paranoid? Was I just an old man afraid of change. Was I jeopardizing my grandchild's future? The loneliness was overwhelming. I missed Helen so much. She would have known what to do. She would have seen through Mark's lies from the beginning. I needed perspective. I needed to see the consequences of Mark's actions firsthand. David had been tracking down some of Mark's other clients, the ones who had already invested. It was time to meet them. David was hesitant. "Robert, these people are devastated," he warned. "It's ugly, but I insisted. I needed to see the truth, the whole truth." We met Mrs. Gable, an elderly widow. She lived in a small, run-down apartment. The smell of poverty hung in the air. She had trusted Mark with her late husband's life insurance payout, a substantial amount, her security for the rest of her life. He had promised her comfort, peace of mind. He had drained her accounts in less than a year. He was so charming, Mrs. Gable whispered. Her eyes were vacant. Her hands trembled as she clutched a worn photograph of her husband. "He said he was like a son to me." He had used the same tactics on her. The charm, the promises, the manipulation. Seeing her poverty, her despair, it chilled me to the bone. This was the future Mark had planned for me. A sterile apartment, empty bank accounts, a broken heart. The doubt vanished, replaced by a cold, burning resolve. I would not let him do this to my family. I would not let him destroy my daughter's life. We had enough evidence to prove fraud. The Ponzi scheme, the failed investments, the trail of victims. But I needed something undeniable. Something that would break the spell Mark had over Sarah. Something personal. Mark, sensing my resistance hardening, tried a new tactic. He showed up at my house on Saturday morning, all smiles and confidence, holding a thick document. The snake was trying to shed his skin. "Robert, I understand your hesitation," he said smoothly, adopting a tone of false empathy. "It's a big step. So, to put your mind at ease, I had my lawyers draw up a guarantee." A guarantee. I knew better than to trust a guarantee from a con artist. "A guaranteed return of 10% annually, regardless of market performance," he continued, beaming. "It's ironclad." He handed me the document. It looked official, full of legal jargon, impressive seals. It was worthless. I'd spent years investigating fraud cases. I recognized the signs, the vague language, the offshore accounts, listed as guarantors, the lack of underwriting by a reputable financial institution. It was a bluff, a desperate attempt to regain control. "This isn't worth the paper it's printed on, Mark," I said, handing it back to him. I didn't hide my contempt. Mark's mask slipped. His smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure annoyance. "You're making a big mistake, Robert," he snarled. The charm was gone. The predator was emerging. He realized he was losing control. The charm offensive was over. It was time for the heavy artillery, but before he launched his final assault, I found the weapon I needed. A memory sparked in my mind, something I had overlooked. When Sarah and Mark bought their condo last year, I had helped them with the down payment. It came from a separate savings account Helen had left specifically for Sarah. It wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial. Sarah had given Mark access to that account. For household expenses, it was a long shot. But I had to check. I was still the executor of Helen's estate. I had access to the statements for that account. I logged into the bank's website. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the recent activity. I prayed I was wrong. I prayed I wouldn't find anything. But there it was, large, systematic withdrawals, not for household expenses, not for the condo, transfers directly to Apex Wealth Solutions. The blood drained from my face, $100,000 over the last 6 months. He wasn't just planning to steal my house. He had already started stealing from Sarah. He was using Helen's legacy, the money she had saved for her daughter's security, to cover his gambling debts, to prop up his failing Ponzi scheme. The sheer audacity of the betrayal took my breath away. The coldness of it, the cruelty. He was stealing from his pregnant wife, from the memory of my dead wife. Now I understood why Mark was so desperate, and I knew how to stop him. Later that afternoon, Mark returned. The smile was gone. His eyes were hard, his jaw set. He didn't bother with pleasantry. The mask was completely off. He walked right up to me, invading my personal space, his expensive cologne filling the air. It smelled like deceit. He leaned in close, his voice low and menacing. "Listen to me, you old fool," he hissed, the veneer of civility completely gone. "You will sell this house. You will give me the money. You have 24 hours to sign the papers." He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "Ugly, venomous. If you don't," he continued, his voice dripping with malice, "I will convince Sarah that you are mentally unfit. I will use your hesitation, your paranoia, as evidence." He was threatening to take away my freedom, my dignity. "I will have you declared incompetent and seek guardianship," he spat. "I will put you in a nursing home, and I will take everything you own. And Sarah will thank me for it." He was ruthless. He would destroy my life without a second thought. For a moment, I felt a flicker of fear. He was capable of it. I knew how the system worked, how easily an elderly person could be sidelined, silenced. But he had forgotten one crucial detail. I was a detective, and I always recorded my interviews. I reached into my pocket and turned off the small digital recorder I'd activated when he arrived. The trap was set. It was time to spring it. I called Sarah. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice calm and steady, projecting a weariness I no longer felt. "I've made a decision. I'm ready to sign the papers." I hated lying to her, but it was a necessary evil. "Can you and Mark come over tomorrow morning?" I asked. "I want to do this as a family." Sarah was relieved, ecstatic. The tension in her voice vanished. "Oh, Dad, thank you," she cried. "You're doing the right thing. Mark will be so happy. We'll be there at 10. I hung up the phone, my heart heavy. This was going to be the hardest day of my life. I was about to shatter my daughter's world, to expose the man she loved as a fraud, a thief. But I had to do it to save her, to protect her future and the future of my grandchild. The night was long, sleepless. I went over the plan again and again. Every detail had to be perfect. The showdown was. The next morning, Sunday, the air in my living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. It smelled of old coffee, fear, and the faint metallic scent of Mark's cologne. Mark and Sarah arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. Mark was beaming, his arrogance radiating off him like heat from a furnace. He carried a sleek leather briefcase, the documents ready for signature. He looked like a man who had just closed the deal of a lifetime. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. Sarah looked nervous but happy. She hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Dad," she whispered. The words twisted the knife in my heart. Soon, she would hate me, but eventually, she would understand. I invited them to sit down. I had arranged the room carefully, like an interrogation room. I sat in my large armchair, Helen's chair. Mark and Sarah sat on the sofa opposite me. David was also there, sitting quietly in the corner, a silent witness. Mark barely acknowledged him, dismissing him as just another old cop, irrelevant, another mistake. David was anything but irrelevant. "All right, let's get this done," Mark announced, opening his briefcase with a flourish. He pulled out the stack of papers. "This should be quick, just a few signatures, and we can all go out and celebrate. I've booked a table at the Gilded Lily." He pushed the papers towards me, offered me a gleaming silver pen. The time had come. I ignored the pen. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, I saw the desperation behind the charm, the fear behind the arrogance. He was a cornered animal, ready to strike. "Before I sign," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the celebratory mood, "I have a few questions." Mark sighed impatiently, the sound loud, theatrical. "Robert, we've been over this," he snapped. "The details are complex. You wouldn't understand. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." "I'm sure you do, Mark," I said, my voice hardening. "But I've been doing some research this week. It seems your company, Apex Wealth Solutions, is in serious trouble." I reached into my own briefcase, an old battered leather thing I had used for 35 years, and pulled out a folder, thick, meticulous, a case file. I laid out the documents on the coffee table, the public filings, the loan agreements, The list of failed investments. The evidence of the Ponzi scheme. The color drained from Mark's face. "You're not securing the baby's future," I said, my voice rising, resonating with the authority I hadn't used in years. "You're trying to cover your massive debts." "You're running a Ponzi scheme, Mark," Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mark, what is he talking about?" "That's insane." She looked at him, confused, scared. Mark's face turned a deep, mottled red. He sputtered, searching for words. "This is outrageous," and he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The sound was loud, violent. "Robert, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're just a retired cop, shuffling papers. You don't understand the complexities of high finance. This is slander." He was losing it. The mask was cracking. "I understand fraud," I corrected him, my voice cold. "And I understand that you have been defrauding elderly clients out of their life savings." I laid out the next set of documents. The client complaints. The testimony of Mrs. Gable. The heartbreaking stories of betrayal and loss. "He's lying, Sarah," Mark screamed, turning to her desperately. "He's always resented me. He's always thought I wasn't good enough for you. He's trying to ruin me." "I'm not trying to ruin you, Mark," I said calmly. "I'm trying to protect my daughter." Sarah was crying now, her face pale, her world collapsing around her. "Mark, tell me it's not true," she begged. "You said the business was thriving. You said we were secure." Mark changed tactics instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by a look of wounded sincerity. He was a master manipulator, a chameleon. He turned to Sarah, taking her hands, his voice softening, pleading. "Sweetheart, listen to me," he begged. "Maybe I stretched the truth a little, but I did it for us, for the baby. I just needed a bridge loan to get through this rough patch." He squeezed her hand. "Your father's money would have been perfectly safe. I would have doubled it in a year. I swear." He was good, so good. I looked at Sarah, praying she could see through the lies. The desperation, but I knew I needed the final blow, the undeniable truth. "A bridge loan?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. "Using your pregnant wife's inheritance without her knowledge." I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the smoking gun. "While you were planning to steal my house," I said, laying the bank statements on the table. Right in front of Sarah. "You were already stealing from your wife." Sarah looked at the statements, her eyes wide with disbelief. The numbers, highlighted in yellow, stark, undeniable. "These are the statements from the savings account your mother left you," I explained, my voice gentle but firm. "The one you gave Mark access to for household expenses." I pointed to the highlighted transactions. $100,000 transferred directly to Apex Wealth Solutions over the last 6 months. I looked at Mark, my eyes blazing with rage. "Helen's money, Mark. You stole Helen's money. The ultimate betrayal. It wasn't the abstract concept of fraud. It was tangible. Immediate theft. He had stolen from the woman he claimed to love, the mother of his unborn child. He had violated the memory of my wife." Mark went completely pale. He had no defense, no excuses. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Sarah's choked sobs. Sarah looked at the statements, then at Mark. The heartbreak on her face was devastating, but beneath the pain, there was a flicker of anger, a realization of the depth of his deception. "You stole from me?" she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "My mother's money? The money she saved for me?" "Please, Sandra, I can explain," Mark stammered, reaching for her again. "Don't touch me," she cried, pulling away from him violently. She stood up, her eyes blazing. "You lied to me. You manipulated me. You turned me against my own father. You made me call him selfish, paranoid." As she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry. I should have listened to you." I stood up and wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. We're okay." Mark, cornered and desperate, made one last fatal mistake. He saw his future collapsing around him, the prison cell waiting. He turned to me, his face twisted in a mask of pure hatred. "You ruined me, you clueless old cop," he screamed, lunging towards me. "I will destroy you. I will take everything you have. You are nothing. David moved to intervene, but I held up my hand. I was not afraid. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Mark, I said calmly. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the digital recorder. I pressed play. Mark's voice filled the room, clear, undeniable. The threats, the confession, the ultimatum. Listen to me, you old fool. You will sell this house. You will give me the money. I will have you declared incompetent and seek guardianship. I will put you in a nursing home and take everything you own. Mark stared at the recorder, his eyes wide with terror. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was completely speechless. He realized it was over. He had not only confessed to the fraud, but also to extortion and elder abuse. David stood up and walked towards the door. I've heard enough, he said. He opened the door. 2 uniformed police officers were standing on the porch. I had called them before the meeting. Mr. Mark Anderson, the older officer said, stepping into the room. The handcuffs jingling on his belt, a sound I knew so well. You are under arrest for fraud, grand larceny, and extortion. Mark just stood there, frozen, defeated, as the officers cuffed him and led him away. He looked back at Sarah, pleading. She just turned away. The spell was broken. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Mark's arrest made the headline. Wealth manager charged in Ponzi scheme targeting elderly. His company collapsed. His investors, alerted by the scandal, filed lawsuits. He was facing serious jail time. The fallout was messy, painful. Sarah filed for divorce. It was a difficult time. She was heartbroken, grieving the loss of the future she had imagined. The betrayal cut deep. She was scared of raising a child alone, ashamed of how she had treated me. But we navigated the pain together. She moved back in with me. The house that had felt so empty, so silent, was now filled with the sounds of a new life preparing to emerge. We converted the spare bedroom into a nursery. We painted the walls a soft yellow, the color of hope. We talked late into the night, rebuilding the trust that Mark had almost destroyed. We mourned the loss of the man we thought he was. We were healing, slowly but surely. One evening, about 6 months later, I was sitting in the living room, holding my newborn grandson, James. He was perfect, a tiny miracle in my arms. The scent of baby powder and warm milk filled the air. A welcome change from the smell of fear and betrayal. Sarah was sitting on the sofa, watching us, a soft smile on her face. The shadows under her eyes had faded, replaced by the exhaustion of a new mother, but also by a newfound strength. She was a survivor. I still can't believe how blind I was. Dad, she said softly. How stupid. You're a detective. I should have known you would figure it out. I should have trusted you. He was charming, sweetheart, I said, rocking James gently. He fooled a lot of people. Love can make us blind sometimes. But you saw the truth when it mattered. We sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable, safe. He called you a clueless old cop? She whispered, the memory still painful. He said you didn't understand how the world worked. I chuckled softly. I suppose I don't understand his world. The world of greed and deception. The world where money is more important than family. Where success is measured in dollars and cents. I reached over and picked up a framed photo of Helen. She was smiling, her eyes sparkling with warmth and intelligence. I felt her presence in the room and surrounding us with love. But I understand what matters, I continued. I understand the value of integrity. I understand the importance of protecting the people we love. I understand that true you isn't something you can deposit in a bank. I looked down at James, sleeping peacefully in my arms. It's this? Right here. I looked around the living room, my home, safe and secure. The memories of Helen were no longer tainted by the threat of loss. They were a source of strength, a reminder of the life we had built together. Mark had underestimated me. He thought my badge was just a piece of metal, my experience obsolete, my life over. But he didn't understand that being a cop isn't just a job. It's who you are. It's a commitment to justice. A dedication to the truth. I was an old cop, perhaps, But I was not clueless. And as I sat there with my daughter and my grandson, feeling the warmth of the evening sun and the promise of a new life, I knew I was the richest man in the world. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comment. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.